We have previously covered inventories, configuration files, and ad hoc commands. So now it's time to move to the bread and butter of Ansible, playbooks. So let's not wait and get right to it. So what are playbooks? Well, playbooks are a sequence of plays, a play being a sequence of tasks performed on managed hosts. The purpose of playbooks is to simplify administrative tasks into easy routines. Tasks can work together within a playbook to document the steps needed to achieve an intended outcome. And best of all, playbooks are repeatable. They can be used more than once to achieve that outcome. Now, when it comes to playbooks, they are written in YAML format and saved usually with the extension of .yaml or .yml. They use spacing for indentation. Children more than parents, so keep spacing constant or they will crash. Empty lines do not impact the playbook. The start of a playbook is always 3 lines, and comments can be added using the hash character. Strings do not have to be in quotation marks, but it is recommended to use quotation for readability. You can write multiple plays within a playbook and tasks are executed in order, from top to bottom. If a task fails, then the playbook will stop and no subsequent task will be run, by default. There are workarounds for this and we shall see that as we go within the course. Now, when running a playbook, the output will be color-coded. Green means that the system is already at the desired state. Yellow means that a change has been made to the system of the managed host in order to bring it to the desired state. And red means something went wrong and the task could not be finalized or could not be performed. Red is usually bad. Now, with all of this in mind, let's look at a sample playbook. We have the 3 dashes which signal the beginning of the playbook. Afterwards, we have the name of the play. In this particular case, this play is called Create New User. We have the hosts to which this playbook applies. In our particular case, it applies to server A. And then we have the tasks. This signals what tasks will be performed on the managed hosts within this play. Each task has a name, uses a module. In our case, the name is ensure the user is created. The module is user. The name of the user which will be created is test, and the state of that user is present. So this task ensures that the user test is present on the managed host, which is server A. Now let's take a look at another sample playbook, which contains multiple tasks, the one below dependent on the one above. The playbook targets server B, and by using the YAM module, it will ensure that the service called firewall-d is installed on server B. Afterwards, it will attempt to start the firewall-d service. This is only possible because tasks are run in order, from top to bottom. You couldn't start the firewall-d service if it did not exist in the first place. Before we move on, I would like to underline the importance of spacing. Both the first task and the second task have the same amount of spaces, because they're both children of the task section. Inadequate spacing can lead to the crash of a playbook. Now, before we move on to the demo, I would like to tell that you can customize some configuration options for individual playbooks. You can specify options which will take precedence over the ones present in the Ansible configuration file. You can specify the remote user Ansible uses to connect to the managed host. You can specify the user Ansible switches to, and you can also specify the way Ansible switches to that user. In order to run a playbook, you just need to run the Ansible Playbook command and specify the name of the playbook. If you would like to check the playbook before running it, you can either do a syntax check by using the -- syntax check option, or running a dry run through the -C option. So now that we have a pretty good idea of how playbooks work, let's go ahead and start the demo. Now first, in order to make writing playbooks a bit easier, I'll create a file called .vmrc in my home directory. This will ensure that whenever I press tab, the spacing will be constant. So I should write here autocmd file type YAML, because all playbooks will be in YAML format. Set local AI ts equals to sw equals to et. I'll just save and exit. And now, whenever I create a YAML file, the spacing will be a bit more constant and it will make writing playbooks a bit more easier. Now I shall be creating a new directory for my exercises, mkdir playbooks, and I will enter this directory using the change directory command. Now I will create my inventory file, and within my inventory file, I will place server A and server B. And I will also create a group called servers, which will contain both server A as well as server B. All that's left now is also to create an Ansible configuration file using vim. I will start the default section and specify the remote user that Ansible will be using in order to connect to the managed hosts. And this will be the user automation and also the inventory file, which is present in /home/automation/playbooks/inventory. Now I will move on to the privilege escalation section, where I will specify that become equals true. The become method will be set to sudo, and the become user will be set to root. As there is no need for a password, the become ask pass option will be set to false. And I will just save and exit. Now I can go on and create my first playbook. It will be named playbook.yaml. I will start the playbook with the classical 3 lines. And I will also give a name to my specific play. The name will be create user. Then I will specify to which hosts this playbook applies, and it will apply to all hosts within the inventory, so both server A and server B. And then I will start writing the tasks. My first task will be called ensure user is created, and it will use the user module. In order to create a user which is named test, and the state of that user will be present. I will save and exit this playbook, and I will first do a syntax check to see if this playbook doesn't have any type of errors or spacing issues. Ansible playbook -- syntax check for my playbook. As you can see, there are no errors, so I think it actually will run on a first try. Then I will run the playbook using the Ansible playbook command specifying the name of the playbook. Now let's just wait a bit for Ansible to gather some facts, and as you can see, both server A and server B have reported a change status. Now let's use an Ansible ad hoc command for both server A and server B using the command module to output the contents of the /etc/passvd file. Judging from the output, we can clearly see the test user does exist with a new ID of 1002. So I will just clear the screen because it seems my playbook has functioned correctly. Now let's edit the playbook to delete the user that we have just created by changing the state of the user from present to absent. Save and exit, and let's run it again. We can clearly see that both server A and server B have reported the change status, and also by the color it is yellow. So let's validate our work by running again an Ansible ad hoc command to see if the test user is still present in the passvd file. And it seems it is not. So let me just clear the screen. And let's document ourselves for additional options for the user module. I'll jump right to the examples at the end of the module. Now, if we look at the first example, we can also specify the UID of the user and also add a comment. So let's do that. I'll just exit the Ansible doc using the Q key and edit my existing playbook to also specify the UID of the user as well as a comment for this particular user. So the UID will be 8000 and the comment will be I am test. So now save and exit, and let's run this playbook again. Now, if you can clearly see, Ansible has reported that there was no change to neither server A nor server B. That is because the state was set to absent and user test does not exist. So there was no need to actually incur a change in server A or server B. I have changed it to present, and now I will run the playbook yet again. So let's wait a bit for Ansible to gather its facts. And as we can see clearly from the output, there was a change to both server A and server B. So let's run an ad hoc command to see what is in the passvd files of both server A and server B. We see the user test with a new ID of 8000 and with a comment I am test. So our module and our play worked perfectly. I will just clear the screen and I will edit our existing playbook yet again. I will change the name of the task from ensure user is created to install HTTPD. I will change the module being used from user to YAM, change the name from test to HTTP, and change the state from absent to latest, making sure that I am installing the latest version of HTTPD. Then I will create a new task which will start the HTTPD service using the service module, specifying the name of the service HTTPD and the state being started. So let's run it using the Ansible Playbook command and see if it works. We'll have to wait a bit for Ansible to gather its facts. And as you can clearly see, it has crashed. It failed to install some specific packages, more specifically the HTTP. Now this is because I got the name wrong intentionally. As you can see, it has not moved on to the second task because the first task crashed and we could clearly see the red color coding. So I will change the name from HTTP to HTTPD. That is the correct name. So let's try running it again with the correct name. Now it will take a bit of time for Ansible to both gather its facts as well as install HTTPD on both server A and server B. It seems server A has reported a change status and also server B has reported a change status, and the task to start HTTPD was done successfully. So I guess it worked. Let's use SSH to connect to server A and do a systemctl status HTTPD, which we can see clearly that it is running. Let's do the same thing also for server B. Connect through SSH to server B, run a systemctl status HTTPD and see if it is running, which it is. So we can clearly see that our playbook ran exactly as planned. Automation is quite awesome. Now let's sanitize our lab environment by removing the HTTPD packages. We shall open our playbook, delete the last task which starts the HTTPD service, and change the state of the YAM module from latest to absent. While we are at it, even if it does not impact our playbook, we can also change the name from install HTTPD to something like remove HTTPD or absent HTTPD. Save and exit, and let's run the playbook using Ansible Playbook and specifying the name. We'll just wait a bit for Ansible to gather its facts, and as you can see, the status for both server A and server B is changed, so that means that the removal was successful. Now let's clear the screen, let's list the contents of the playbooks directory, and let us remove the Ansible configuration file that we created at the beginning of the demo with the rm command. Let's now use vim to create a new playbook called playbook2.yaml. Now let's start this playbook like any other playbook with 3 lines. We shall name the first play my play, and we shall specify additional options. Become will be set to true, the remote user will be automation, the become method will be sudo, the become ask pass will be set to false, and the become user will be set to root. And finally, the manage host will be server B. Now we can start the task section. Now within the task section, I will create a task by the name of create user test. We will use the user module to create a user called test on server B. Now I will save and exit the playbook and attempt to run it using the Ansible Playbook command. Now I need to specify the inventory file, but the playbook crashed. Why did it crash? Because become as pass is not a valid attribute for a play. So if the options are incorrect, the playbook will just fail on execution, and that is why I deleted the invalid option. Now I will attempt to execute the playbook again, specifying the inventory, and as you can see, it has functioned correctly. So keep in mind that any invalid option within the playbook will cause it to immediately crash. I will just clear the screen now and edit the playbook again. Now I will add a second play to this particular playbook. I will name this second play my second play. I will again specify the options, become true, remote user will be set to automation, the become method will be set to sudo, the become user will be set to root, and the targeted host will be both server A and server B through the group servers. Now I will start my second task section, where I will specify a task with the name of create a second user on both servers. The second user will be named test2, and the state of this particular user will be present. Afterwards, I will create a second task with the name delete user test. The module which I will be using will be the user module again. I will specify the name of the user, which is test, which is, keep in mind, present only on server B, and the state will be absent. Now I will save and exit my playbook and run it using the Ansible Playbook command. Now let's give Ansible a few seconds to see what it does. So, judging from the output, the user test was already present on server B. The second user was created on both server B and server A, and the user test was deleted on server B, as it was not present on server A to begin with. So congratulations, you now have a pretty good baseline understanding of what an Ansible inventory file is and how to create one. You can create your own Ansible configuration files and know where to place them within the Linux file system. You have learned the usefulness of Ansible ad hoc commands and how to use them. And finally, you gained a good understanding of how to write a simple Ansible playbook and the benefits that playbooks bring to Ansible.